I've actually got people joining. I'm struggling to tell. A little thing that says 3, but then if I click participants, I haven't got anything. Can you do me a favour, people? You can type something if you're actually here. I don't want to just talk to myself again. That's stupid. I can. There's 5 little things here, but I can't see if anybody's actually in the thing. I only see my own name. Hello, Thompson. Is anyone else actually here at all? And Molly's there. Right. Okay, once you've typed something, you appear in the participants list. So I've potentially got 6 or 7. It keeps popping differently, but I can't see until you put something in. Back down to 5 again. It's anticlimactic. I'll just give it a minute, see if people manage to get on, and then I'll start talking to you. What the internet has, or no, hopefully not. No, we're still on this at the moment. I don't think the internet's dropped out. It hasn't dropped out. It's yours. Right. Okay. We're kind of going on past. I'll see if this works or not. I didn't enjoy doing the last one where I was just kind of talking or trying to talk through what is essentially a very long piece of criticism, and try and make it kind of coherent and structured. I don't think it worked wonderfully well, so we'll try it this way instead. I've picked out some kind of various bits from his kind of criticism stuff, and I'll just kind of ask you some questions based on that, and hopefully you are willing to type responses into the box in terms of how you kind of respond to some of the things there. And hopefully that will work better. If not, I will consider some other way to do it slightly more effectively around the kind of looking at the criticism, because it just doesn't work, especially with the longer bits, me just talking through it, I don't think. So let's start with, in fact, I was going to do it in order, but I'm going to change my ordering, I think. He says, let's see if we can find the direct kind of quote that goes with it. One of the later bits. Sorry, bear with me. I want to talk about Ophelia first rather than anything else. Here we are. Okay, so he says certain things about kind of Ophelia. He's not terribly pleasant to either Ophelia or Gertrude as a kind of critic. He says all the persons in Hamlet except the hero are minor characters who fail to rise to the tragic level. And he describes Ophelia. Ophelia should be merely one of the subordinate characters, and necessarily, accordingly, she should not be the equal in spirit or power or intelligence of his famous heroines. So he's basically saying that Ophelia is a bit thick, a bit kind of naive. He kind of compares her to other Shakespearean heroes or heroines, even Imogen from Cymbeline, Cordelia from King Lear, Portia, whom I can't remember where she comes from, and Juliet. And Hamlet would either have been stimulated to do his duty, or which is more likely, he would have gone mad, which is likeliest he would have killed himself in despair if Ophelia had been stronger. And Ophelia's death, and in the love and the fate of Ophelia herself, there is introduced an element not of deep tragedy, but of pathetic beauty, which makes the analysis of her character seem almost a desecration. And it says later on, naturally, she's incapable of understanding Hamlet's mind, though she can feel its beauty. So all around Ophelia, he kind of presents her as a bit kind of pathetic and sad, and he sees her as not as tragic as a lot of the kind of characters and figures in Hamlet. Do you agree? Let's see if you will actually respond to me or not, people. What do you think? Can't tell if people are actually typing on it. It's inconvenient. Okay. So why? What evidence would you bring in for that? You also need an apostrophe there, Thomason. I'm not terribly convinced by this, people. It's a bit kind of slow and clunky with not many people on, isn't it? Never mind. Okay, so do you mean she's kind of unaware of the fact that it's a feigned disposition, or do you mean that it's that she's unaware of his madness entirely, or the kind of reasoning? What? Go on. Okay, why not? Okay. Why don't you think she's a fool then? Why do you not agree with Bradley on that? While you're sort of thinking around that, I kind of posed you a question. I mean, obviously, right. I don't know how many people we're down to now. This is kind of dropping in and out. Oh, this is weird. I think it's this process possibly doesn't work with this few of participants. I was wondering whether I might try using it with the first year, so we're still kind of forced to carry on doing stuff more, where I'd end up possibly with more people as well. What we got? It's an interesting point. So she allows his madness to influence hers. How do you mean? In the they serve the same purpose, or is it what's the kind of link that you're making there? Is Molly still there as well? Or she disappeared into the ether? Okay. So if she's aware that she's being used as a pawn and she's letting her control her love of Hamlet kind of control how she's feeling, why does she choose to be, or why does Shakespeare kind of present her as choosing to go with her father's wishes rather than go with or sort of reveal her position to Hamlet? Why is she kind of presented as essentially siding with father over Hamlet? He seems to be the thing that makes her lose her mind. Does that mean she's weak in losing her mind? Is that the only factor in her losing her mind as well? I mean, obviously, Hamlet's the direct one presented as responsible for killing Polonius, but does that not? Is it then directly him that's causing her to lose her mind, or is it the loss of her father? Okay, so she's kind of tied into the kind of father, and she's forced into this to kind of follow it. Interesting. So again, I kind of bring it back. Do you then think that she's necessarily the kind of non-tragic figure that Bradley presents her as? Is her death merely kind of pathetic rather than tragic in the same way as Hamlet's is? I kind of ask that as a question, then I'll look at Gertrude as well, because he really doesn't seem to like women very much, or he doesn't see them as particularly uh, in a particularly flattering way within the play. I can't tell if you're still to just sit here. So he talks about kind of Gertrude as well. And he talks about her kind of characterization by Shakespeare here. And he says that she's essentially not a kind of bad-hearted woman, but she's just got a soft animal nature, and she's very dull and very shallow, and that she simply loves to be happy. That's why she's kind of gone with Claudius. So I just want you to think for a minute. Do you see Gertrude as well as how he kind of describes her here, like a sheep in the sun, and to do her justice, it pleased her to see others happy, like more sheep in the sun. Do you think that, as a description, does justice to Gertrude's character? Yeah, that's an interesting point, Molly. He does talk about Lady Macbeth here, though, in the response, doesn't he? And he kind of sees her as a more tragic figure than Ophelia. So, do you think that Lady Macbeth is a more tragic figure than Ophelia? Um, so yeah, I like this. So she becomes collateral damage. She's simply a kind of tragic innocent and sort of dies in response to Hamlet's actions. Um, yeah, I'm just going to go back to the way he describes it. Yeah, so Lady Macbeth is able to kind of dominate the mind of Macbeth and can control him. So there's kind of more to her. So she's not led; she leads, as opposed to uh, uh, Ophelia. What do we think about Gertrude, though? How do we respond to her? Do we think that she is merely a kind of sheep's? So Bradley kind of implies in relation to yours, where does he talk about her? He sort of implies that she's already been having an affair with Claudius, but she's not part of the murder. And he says basically that it's not for Hamlet that she's doing this. It's simply because she likes nice things. She's kind of shallow in that respect. She's won with gifts. So where is it? Dun, dun, dun. I've lost it now. So in Bradley's opinion, anyway, he sees her as herself simply liking nice things. Hamlet is he's causing problems because he's disrupting her nice world, and the kind of she just wants all the happy little sheep to sun themselves. And it's only she doesn't recognize kind of the vices in Claudius until Hamlet points them out. So again, she's kind of shallow and vapid as a character and a bit empty. So do you kind of see her in this way, or do you think that she's more kind of three-dimensional than simply a kind of a woman who likes nice things? I'll kind of pose this as a question, then I will kind of move on to Claudius, I think. So you think she's more canny in kind of keeping her position here? Do you think that she's having an affair with Claudius before the old king dies? Yeah, so she's kind of presented with an opportunity, and she would be kind of foolish not to take the opportunity. She's presented with a way to retain power and to retain some kind of authority, but is unable to take any other option and route through it. Do you agree with him that she's having an affair? Just quickly go on, before old Hamlet dies, do you think that this is something that Shakespeare wants to see as having been longer term potentially within it? Yeah. So we agree. Molly, do you agree? I'll kind of pose to you the Claudius bit. So if you were ever to get a question about kind of villainy or something in Hamlet, It talks. You could talk around Claudius, and he says that Claudius. Well, he is the villain, but Claudius isn't cruel or malevolent. Do you think that Claudius is? He's not cruel. He's not necessarily an evil figure in the same way as other characters. Yeah, so there is a kind of air of suspicion created around it with that kind of the speed and the transition between the two. I'll do that quick Claudius point, then I've got another one that will kind of go back up to that I'll kind of pose. I've got two other points I'll go through quickly. Yeah, so I mean, if we think through the different characters, he treats Laertes well. He kind of humours Polonius. He doesn't even really directly mistreat Hamlet in the same kind of way as we might see other characters doing. Yeah. So without the interference of the two side figures, you could have actually had a kind of peaceful kingdom. Claudius is simply a man of vice, potentially in his drinking, but not necessarily a bad human being. Yeah, he kind of promises title to Hamlet. Yeah, we don't know if it's wassail. It's I can't remember what it's a mix of. It's kind of beer and cider or something. I think it's a kind of appled beer. So the other bit, where's the other bit gone? I don't know. That's a bit harsh on old King Hamlet. He stops the war at least for a temporary period with his duel with the old Fortinbras. Do you think that Claudius is potentially a better king than old King Hamlet? There we are. Okay, a couple of other bits I'll just kind of talk about, then I'll put a close to it, I suppose, and I'll ask you what you think I should do to try and improve them. So alongside the kind of Claudius bits, Bradley's view here is that at the heart of kind of Hamlet's whole problem and this is on the 28th page. The truth is that though Hamlet hates his uncle and acknowledges the duty of vengeance, his whole heart is never in this feeling or this task. His whole heart is in the horror at his mother's fall and in longing to raise her. So do you think that Hamlet's main conception as presented throughout the play is in his mother's fall over anything else? Do you think that that is the overriding image in Hamlet's mind that Shakespeare wants to kind of present to us? Why is nobody allowed to sleep in an orchard in Denmark? It's a nice sunny day. I'm sure you can go sleep in an orchard. Back in a minute, people. Okay, so the cat's wandered off now. I can't bring the cat back. I could disturb the other cat, I suppose. So, Molly, you see it as kind of being a factor, but not in being the kind of overriding thing. Thomason, you seem more drawn towards the fact that it's kind of central within it. So there's a kind of degree of debate around that. And possibly he kind of ignores the other factor. He's trying to kind of take it down to a single idea and kind of leading the problem rather than allowing a kind of switch around. The other thing that he kind of notes, he kind of debates around whether Hamlet actually loves Ophelia at all. And he talks about things like the fact that he never talks about Ophelia in any of the soliloquies, really. He only maybe vaguely references her at all. What do you make of the fact that he never ever talks about Ophelia in soliloquy? Do you think that suggests that he has no real affection for her, that it's only ever an outward appearance? One's just called the small kitten and one called the black kitten. No, their actual names are Means and 11, isn't it? Interesting. He does talk about his mother in his soliloquies, though, doesn't he? He talks about kind of his feelings around her, and he clearly does kind of, that reflection on his mother. Does that show he loves her, or as part of it, or is it simply kind of purely disgust coming through? Yeah, we get the reference into the letters. Having said that, he does point out, and I don't think I've got it highlighted, so probably won't be able to find it, that with the love letters to Ophelia, they're all kind of couched in fairly cliched kind of romantic expression. So how much there's a kind of genuineness to them is a little bit kind of dubious. There are more people on now suddenly. Don't know who was actually else here. Does he kill his mother? Okay, so he's been blinded from any kind of love. Do you think that his mother's betrayal kind of reflects onto the way he sees Ophelia as well? Because that's kind of touched on within it as well. His little heart. That's not how Horatio describes it. Horatio is far more kind of great heart. She depends on performance. That does she have kind of? Is she more outspoken, or is that something to do with how a performer potentially has the lines delivered? I'm trying to think. No, he doesn't talk about Horatio in soliloquy either. That's a valid point. Okay, so within the kind of context, the time frame, there's a degree of outspokenness, but in contrast to Shakespeare's other kind of female characters, she's arguably still kind of less outspoken than a number of them. So it kind of brings back to the original point that he makes that she's kind of weaker than characters like Juliet, potentially, like Lady Macbeth, like Imogen, and figures like that. Okay. Do you think, I mean, she says more things to Laertes. Do you think she ever really is able to exert any control over her father? Watch the cat again, rather than me. Okay. I don't know about overpower him. I don't think it would take much to kind of make him seem a fool. But sometimes you get fools who have power. Um, yeah, so she could kind of there's a potential to pick him apart like Hamlet himself does, and kind of use that kind of humor aspect against him. Okay, I think in relation to this is kind of me kind of experimenting with the whole process as well. Having done this and kind of considered how I might do it with a bigger group. Obviously, one of the things that makes this a bit slower is that there's not many of you actually on it. Do you think it would be helpful if, rather than just give you the kind of secondary criticism to read, if there was a kind of crib sheet with maybe discussion points before coming on to something like this? How do you think it could be kind of improved slightly? Because I feel there's kind of a lot of me kind of sitting and sort of staring at the moment. I'm trying to work out how best to do some of the things remotely because it's getting a bit same-ish, if that makes sense, because I can't change things as much as I would do. Any suggestions, people? Other than bring the cats every time. Yeah, I think that's the problem with the sort of second years. There's not as many of you that are kind of feel the need at this point. So possibly the first years there'd be more kind of coming in. Oh, you've joined right at the end, have you, Per? Sort of an hour in. You just kind of joined to see the cat. You're quite lucky to see the black cat at the moment. It's only because it's been out all night killing things that it's actually tired and here during the day. Half the time it's outside during the day. Only the cat. Small cat. Perfect. Well done. Well done. That was good. Zoom, the college have said, be careful about using because of the kind of security flaws with it. We've been switched to using Microsoft Teams, which takes more kind of setting up and admin stuff. This is kind of more secure in relation to doing it. but yeah, obviously it then means there's no kind of video feeds in opposite directions. But Zoom has been, and the Microsoft Teams thing is horrible to do meetings on, because you've got lots of people trying to talk at the same time. So I'd rather keep it something like this as well, where there's a kind of text thing rather than a voice thing, because it all gets a bit disjointed. Any other kind of suggestions before I kind of leave it for the moment? Not being helpful. That's nice. It's the joy of playing with cats and laser pens. Yeah, with the first years, they've been having to send through notes afterwards, because I've never used Google Classrooms in the same way. I'm not sure that bringing the cats into college would work wonderfully well. As entertaining as it might be to start with. It would have helped morale. Yes, this is a good point. I prefer to bring dog in, but I think they're better in many ways. Yes, it was Mandy who brought a dog in. Dress the cats up as Hamlet and Claudius. They do fight a lot. That would work. Cat doesn't want to play. Yes, I wouldn't kill them. Poison water bowls. Gatsby and Daisy. Catsby and Daisy. Trying to antagonize the cat now. Yes. Yeah, I'm not quite sure the cats are that well trained. Never mind. Come here. No, not having it. Right, okay. I'll have a think about it, people, and I'll give it another go. Tomorrow I'll send you the same stuff as I send the first years, because it works for you, in relation to Hamlet again. As I say, it's in many ways it does feel pretty pointless for you lot, but we don't have complete control over what grades they're going to give you. It's going to run through a process, so I think it is useful to people to kind of keep going with some stuff, just in case they end up wanting to kind of sit the exam when it does happen, potentially. But as I say, hopefully none of you'll need to do that. It's the first time your brain's worked in a while. That's the point. I think you do want to just keep half an eye on it, just on the off chance. I might try something similar towards the end of next week then, but maybe with a bit more kind of in terms of guidance points going with it. And possibly leave you with the image of the cat biting my foot at the moment, which is happening down there underneath. No, I can't tell if you can see that or not. Right. I'll send you some other stuff tomorrow, and I'll have a think about it, people, and I'll try and refine my methods. But I bid you adieu for now, and I'm going to go and walk some dogs instead. Toodaloo for now, people.
Why are you not in your rambunctious solitude?
No, if I did a house tour, I'd have to clean the house, so I'm not doing that. Bye, people.